Welcome to another episode of the Hospitality Mentor Podcast. And today I'm excited because we've been talking online a lot, but now our first time talking in person. I've got Caesar Wurm, the Vice President of Commercial for IHG and also an accomplished author. Caesar, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Steve. Thrilled to be here. As we were talking a little bit earlier, just so excited about all the great work you're doing. Follow your podcast, of course, had some friends already go in with you. So very honored to be here.
I like it. We got a new friend in each other here on the podcast, and I'm excited to learn about your journey because you got a unique one, right?
Yes, sir.
Everyone's got a unique journey, but you got a really cool one. But we always start with the first question. What was your first job in hospitality?
Room service assistant overnight in a
Wow.
hotel in Sao Paulo in Brazil. That's where I'm from. Yeah. That's
Overnight room service. That's a fun shift, man. Was it a party
Yes.
hotel or was it a business hotel where you just had to wait for the morning to come?
No, it was a business hotel, but still pretty busy. It was at the time was one of the few five-star hotels and was the newest hotel in Sao Paulo. So we used to get all the famous people from Brazil and of course internationally. So musicians, actors, business people. So there was always something going on, and I fell in love with the industry there because of the energy, a lot of excitement. You meet a lot of people. So yeah, it was a very fun job.
And what was the name of that hotel?
Renaissance.
The Renaissance Hotel.
Yeah,
What city were you?
yeah, in Sao Paulo, Brazil.
Sao Paulo,
Yeah,
Brazil. Is it still
yeah.
there?
He's still there. Yeah,
All
he's
right,
still
I'm just gonna look
there.
this up.
Great location. So I think we'll be there for for a long time.
So what was it about that job that you liked? Because that is, like you said, overnight running room
Yeah.
service. I've run that division, that department before. What was it that you liked about it?
Well, I loved because a couple of things. I was studying hotel school. I just had started, and so it really worked well with the timing that I had available to do some work, and it was a really hard job to get. In Brazil, you need, I don't know if that's still the case or not, but even though it was like a super entry level position, you still had to do, had a decent amount of handle of the English language because, of course, the international guests. So, I mean, I was so happy to get the job. It almost felt like I hit the lottery because I was
Mhm.
always like a bad student. I didn't have a lot of like great expectations from a professional and academic perspective. So I got really excited. And then starting there just opened my eyes to, it's almost like you're running a mini city. And I got exposure to different departments, meeting very interesting people, just a lot of young people like myself just getting started in the industry, but then also interacting with people like you mentioned, someone that was running room service, my manager. He was like a 30-year veteran in F&B, so he knew it all. And
Mhm.
just kind of getting that sense of exposure, more the traditional F&B. It was very high end. So it was exciting. It just really opened up a new world to me.
And you said you were studying at the same time for hospitality. Was
Yeah.
that what you wanted to be? Like, how did you get into that world? Because was it some
Well,
of your family, or was it just like, hey, I like this, I'm gonna figure it out?
yeah, I guess I'll figure it out. It was again, my grades weren't that great, so it's not like in Brazil. It's very hard to get into the top schools.
Hmm.
Your GPA really doesn't matter. You have to go and do a test. Let's say if you want to do medicine, you go and do a test with the people that want to apply for medicine, and then you're competing, I don't know, 200 people for one spot. So there was no chance of ever getting to any anything that exciting. And then at the time, I had an older friend that he was already working actually at the hotel. He was studying hotel school, so he got me some exposure to that. And I thought, wow, that's something interesting. And once I got the job and got exposure to the school, I said, okay, this is something I can do. I always loved people, loved being around people, and it was a very good energy. And I said, well, this looks like a great career opportunity.
Yeah, and listen, I think you chose a great career, and so now you're in room service. You're there. What happens? How do you start transitioning in your career? Because you become a very successful salesperson, but how do
Yeah.
you get there?
Yeah, I was very fortunate my entire career, Steve, for a couple of reasons. One, I got the opportunity to transfer after one in Brazil. I went and finished my studies in Switzerland. So that was a fantastic experience. Also learning different cultures, improving my English, and so on. And then once I was about to graduate, I interviewed. I don't know how was your experience, but I interviewed for a lot of roles. And of course, I always wanted to try to be in sales, something
Hmm.
that I thought that I would enjoy. But I heard like 20 or 30 no's because like they wouldn't give me a chance right after college to become a sales manager. So I just really said, listen, I'm going to have to prove myself and create my own path.
Hmm.
So I got a rooms division internship at a hotel here in Atlanta. And then that was the beginning. I start doing um, additional work scope and trying to do things after trying to help the sales department, give ideas, suggestions. So then I was 6 months into my internship, and a small sales position opened up. They said, "Hey, you'd like to give it a shot." I went for it, and then that's how it started.
And
So,
the
and
rest
then
was history.
once I started in sales, never really looked back.
Yeah, I mean, it seems like you've got a natural talent for it. So you started, was it a national, were you national sales manager or were you starting as coordinator? How did you start there?
Yeah, so I started as a EMM, executive meeting manager. So I was really handling 25 rooms and under.
Yep.
And I liked it because as you know, it's a very fast pace, that small meetings. So great interaction, learning how to sell. And then I was partnered with someone that was much more experienced, and I learned a lot, and we became friends. And yeah, the people that was in that hotel at the time was the Sheraton Atlanta Hotel. It was amazing people. I was just a couple of weeks ago. I spent some time with a couple of folks that used to work with me. It really became a family, and they really embraced me as a young kid. I was 20, I don't know, 21 or so at the time. So I think everyone saw me like as their son, and and poured it in.
We interviewed a guy, one of my mentors, this guy, Paul Breslin. I think he was a general manager of that hotel
Yeah,
for a while.
wow, so fun you say this. I actually one of our team members here entertained him yesterday at a Braves game. Paul is a class act. Paul
Yes, he is.
was my first GM, so he actually was one of the supported me making the move, and very grateful for Paul. He's an amazing professional and person, as you know.
Yeah, he's one of the people who got me started in this. So, Paul, if you're listening, I'll make sure to clip this and send it to you. Caesar and I thank you very much. Some
Yeah,
of your disciples here. Small world. You see, I love it. So
very
you're
small.
at the Sheraton Atlanta. You're doing a good job. You move up into becoming a national sales manager. You're
Mhm.
doing that for a couple of years, 4 years, and you seem to like it. But then you end up moving, right?
Yeah.
Is it just because it was within the same family of hotels? Why did you end up moving hotels? That's a hard choice for a lot of people.
Yeah, it was a hard choice, and it was a good career opportunity growth, and that was my first director opportunity,
Hmm.
director of group sales at the time at the Crown Plaza Ravinia, right behind from where I'm talking today. And so I think really I'm always a big believer of a couple of things, right? Number one, trust your gut as opportunities come up. I think usually most people have very good instinct, and as you go through life, you know how to trust those feelings you have or thoughts. And then number two, I it was for a good reason, right? A continued progression, and the team was very supportive around. I think
Hmm.
that was the thing that was very exciting. On your first question, I was being very blessed of having amazing people around me, and at that time, really they cheered me on and said, "Listen, you always have a opportunity to come back," because thankfully I left in very good terms. Which amazingly enough, I went back there as a DOS to the Sheraton
I was
after
gonna say,
a year and a half or so.
yeah. That's my
So
next question for you, right? Is because you left the hotel, and a lot
yeah,
of times when somebody leaves, they're like, "Oh, he's gone. We're gonna keep moving on." But then 2 years, a year and a half later, you come back as director of sales. So you left as national sales manager, you
Yeah.
come back as director of sales, and so the people you were probably working with are now reporting to you,
Yeah.
right? It's a kind of a unique situation. What was that like for you?
Yeah. Yeah, it is unique, and I think was very I think it was easier than what I think can be, because a couple of things. I think I always worked very hard to have uh, establish a very good respect and trust with people that I work with, and I think they knew the type of person that I am, that you know they can trust me, and I will help, right, the greater good to help us drive performance. And also I think that actually one of my mentors, Tom Counts, he was a great example. I mean, the guy would run circles around me on knowledge, experience, but we complemented each other, right? And I think I tried to be very thoughtful when I can add something, or when I can bring value, and when also to step back and let people do what they know best. So I think it was understanding where I can enhance and be respectful of people, just because a lot of times you experience this, right? Just because you're the boss or you have a boss, it doesn't mean that person knows it all, have
Mhm.
all the answers. So it's really just having how we can build off each other, and make the best out of all the knowledge that's in the room, all the experience, and at the end of the day, shooting for that North Star.
Yeah, I think that's great advice. I think anyone kind of coming back, because I did that too, where I left a
uh,
hotel and came back.
yeah.
And there's some people who still see you as that lower level, and you
Yeah.
have to like show, like, no, but I learned a lot of stuff since I last was here, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So you're there, you're doing a good job. You hit 2 years, and then a unique opportunity comes where you switch companies into a company that I'm a big fan of, Starwood Hotels.
Yeah.
And so what was that like for you? Was that something that you sought out? Because this is a big jump
Yeah,
in
it
the
was a
role that
big
you take
jump.
on. You oversee a couple of hotels, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, it was a big jump, and I was nervous. I got a call that, hey, would you like to be considered? And I remember talking. Now that you mentioned this, I haven't thought about this for a long time, but I remember talking to my wife Laura. Said, like, I don't know, Laura, I'm not sure if I can do this. Right?
Mhm.
It makes you sometimes wonder, like, if you're ready for it. And I think, like through your experience as well, looking back, I think there was a couple of roles that on paper I wasn't really ready, right? If you have to wait to check all the boxes, I wasn't ready. But you have to trust your potential, you have to trust your ability. And one thought and one liner that always helped me create the courage to go and try things when I'm scared or I have fear is like, hey, someone is going to do this job, right? So why not you? So it's like
That's true.
there's never a perfect person for every job. And I think as long as you have, the commitment, the passion, and you're not the dumb, but the most dumb guy out there, you'll be able to do okay. So
It's true. And I think doing this podcast more and more
uh,
opens up the eyes that not everyone, there's no one that knows everything. And
yeah,
everyone kind of just, all right, I'm going to bet on myself and I will figure this out. Right. And
yeah.
it sounds like you did this. So what was that jump like? So your wife sounds like she supported you in doing
Yeah,
this.
she always being very supportive, and at the time, I also again went to work for a fantastic person that we still engage nowadays. Tim Dallin. He was overseeing the W Atlanta downtown, and I went as director of sales and marketing there. Just an amazing person, an amazing mentor, very analytical. So I start learning a lot of different things as well, and especially how to engage with big investment companies,
Mhm.
and kind of start learning that ownership piece, understanding how performers are built. And so that I kind of start opening also a new next level, I guess, for me. and then really thankfully had a great run with Starwood. Was able to experience different markets, different hotels. Ended up going to Texas after to help improve hotel performance, and then South Florida at the W Fort Lauderdale, and yeah, and then just kept opening more doors, and then end up moving with Patrick at Trust, and
Yeah.
a few years back.
Well, another podcast guest, we had Patrick Goddard on, who's now president of Brightline
Yeah,
Trains and doing a great job. One of my favorite companies out there. I use that service all the time. But so
yeah,
you end up joining. So you're with Starwood. You've been with big company with Sheraton. You were with
yeah.
Starwood. You're with Crown Plaza. So these are major companies, and you end up leaving and joining Trust Hospitality. And so
Mhm.
we've heard a little bit about the formation of Trust Hospitality when we interviewed Patrick, but it
Yeah,
really is a boutique operation, more
right.
entrepreneurial. I won't say startup, but entrepreneurial mode. They're
Mhm.
growing, building things. What was that like for you? Because
Yeah.
it can be very different. There's some people who love the structure of here's the standards, here's the rules, here's the playbook. Then you have to pretty much create it, I think, if I'm reading the room right here.
Yes. Yeah, you're absolutely right. That was also a very fun experience because to your point was almost like a 180. You go from a big company where most things are, most procedures, processes,
Mhm.
technology, brands, everything is pretty established, and you just gotta, figure out how to optimize whatever resources you have, optimize the teams, and so on. To then, to your point, you go to Trust, where at the time, I think we had 18 open and operating hotels in the US and in the Caribbean,
Yep.
and then had another 18 or so in development. So to your point, very fast-paced environment because we would gain hotels and lose hotels in a snap of the finger.
Yeah, frustrating.
Yeah, you know how it is, and
I'm dealing with that in the vacation rental world right
yeah,
now. We were just talking about that.
exactly.
And we're like
And
dabbling with hotels, and Patrick's stories made me nervous. You're making me nervous now too.
yes, yeah. So you learn a lot. You learn a lot. You have to become very fast at identifying opportunities, learning about markets. I mean, I got exposed to so many markets because we had hotels in New York, of course, several in Florida, in the
Yeah,
Keys, Louisiana, and then the Caribbean. So we learn about each of the islands, and then to your point, the most interesting thing to me was really developing a hotel from the startup. So it's really looking at that as a person. It's like, okay, how this hotel, what's what's this person looks like. So all the hotel's gonna look like, and what's gonna be the colors, the F&B, the scent, and everything, the target market. You know this better than I do, and that was really exciting to
hmm,
learn that piece. And so I learned a lot there too. And to your point, everyone had to do a little bit of everything because a small and mighty team, and yeah, that was a lot of fun.
but like again, those kind of companies, it's hard to go right because you're losing management companies or contracts, you're getting them, and it's kind of going back and forth all the time, and so it can wear on a company, I'm sure. Uh,
Yes,
and so you make a change, and I like this because you're coming into Intercontinental Hotels when you leave
correct.
there. How hard a decision was that for you to do?
That one was not so hard for a couple of reasons. Number one, my wife is from kind of in the area, and her family's here, so that was easy from that side of things. And then at the time, Richard Millard, the owner, he was looking to possibly sell the company. So there's different groups looking at it, and depending on who may get the company, wasn't clear kind of how stable it would be or what would be the plan, because a couple of larger companies are looking at us, which then right
Had
would
to
make
roll.
me not as needed.
Yes.
And then I said, well, given the what could happen and the ability, and then coming to a company like IHG was. So yeah, I came and interviewed, and then I got a pretty exciting job that was opening new hotels, and so a little bit of the experience that I had from Trust also from Starwood, from a previous company, larger company perspective, and then I worked on very exciting hotels. The first two that I worked on was the Intercontinental LA downtown, which is a beast. It's very
Mhm.
nice. I mean, the views amazing, and then also the Hotel Indigo downtown, right next to the crypto arena there by LA Live.
So what is that like when are you opening hotels, assisting? Are you trying to find the hotels? What is that role, right? Because you got
Yeah,
some
so
interesting roles now coming up.
yeah, great question. So this one was focused on helping hotels from a sales and marketing perspective. So it's really to figure out, hey, do we have the right segmentation in place, right? We know our pro forma numbers, so how we're going to get there. And really figuring out that we have all that in place, helping hire the sales teams, and then engaging with global sales, accounts, helping with sales calls, really a little bit of everything. But at the end of the day, it's just making sure that we can successfully open and ramp up the hotel from a top line perspective.
Yeah, it's a really interesting way because you got to get those hotels up and running, or not, you're just bleeding cash. So you have to have money coming in. You have a very key role in doing that. Um,
Yes.
and then over the next, like, I have a couple of notes here, right? Over the next couple of years, you're trying to maybe find yourself a little bit, like finding the right role, right? Because you have a couple of moves, and I've
Yeah.
done this too, where it's like a year and a half here, 2 years
Yeah.
here, and they're always like, "What happened?" You always have a good story, but what happened? All right, like what was going on that was happening in your world? Was it something
Yeah.
trying to find the right niche? Was it not talk personal? Like there's all different things going on, but what
Yeah.
was going on?
Wow, you're a very insightful person. First person that ever put to me this way. But yeah, you're right. I think I was a little bit couple reasons. When I first got here, I don't think I ever got rooted in a way, right? I think that to be honest, I think the scope of the company, I worked in large corporations, but man, it's big. It's big. You're working in a company where in this office we have, I don't know, 2,500 people,
Wow.
a lot of departments, and it's hard to know who does what, where to go for this, and you have all these new systems, and opening hotels, to your point, is very intense. So I think coming in for that, I'm not sure if like I wasn't ready. I just never felt like I found my place.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and then Hotel Equities, one of the partners, he actually worked for Paul Breslin. He was the guy that gave me a chance at sales. So
Oh
Brad
wow.
Rahinsky. So he was the guy that gave me the shot to have my first sales position. So he called me and said, "Hey, we're looking for a VP of sales. Fast growth, like a bigger version of trust, but
Yep.
not too far off,
Mm-hmm.
right?"
Yep.
And then, so to your point, it became like a why not, right? I'm not in love with the role here. I haven't, found my place, and someone that I know, I've always stayed in touch with him, so it became kind of, let's give it a shot and then
Mm-hmm.
see how that goes, and that's
And how
that's
did it
why.
go? And how did it go?
Yeah, it's like Trust 2.0.
Yeah.
It was great. Well, it was interesting for a couple of things. One, the culture was very nice. So the founder, Fred Cerrone, fantastic human being, very very focused on taking care of people. Also, he's a big believer in God, and so he really deeply cares about people doing the right thing, and that was something that gave me great exposure, because from a work environment perspective, I haven't had that experience to that degree. So that was very good. Second piece is like they're growing very fast. Again, similar to Trust, but we're getting a little bit of like buckets of hotels at once. So you're trying to sign groups that had 5 to 10 hotels, and so it's very fast paced. And then one interesting thing is that it got me exposure to different brands. So at the time, they used to manage a lot of Marriott hotels, Hiltons, which really I haven't had any experience.
Yep.
So it was great to learn
That's
that
cool.
side of things, how they look at business, their systems, the brands, the strengths, the areas of opportunities. So that was like free school, right, from that side of things. And then also, as we're expanding, you're building your team, and to your point, is very resources have to be very well thought out, because you you couldn't grow as fast as you wanted from. You have more work than you have the staff to support, but also you got to wait for the funds to come in, right? There's always those hotels that are at risk. So you learn to continue to be very resourceful, and it's always in that kind of tension situation between resources and between your portfolio.
Yeah, it's challenging, but it's cool that you mentioned you have different hotels. So is it different reporting for every hotel you have to
Yeah.
show? So it's all this
So
extra work that you have to do.
yes. So now they solve for it, which is great.
Oh, good.
With the beauty of BI tools and all that. But
Yeah.
yeah, so a lot of times there used to be different reporting because you had different grouping and brands. It had some
Mhm.
independent. So yeah, it wasn't the easiest. But yeah, certainly you learned a lot.
And so, all right. So give me now the next steps, because now this is where I was looking up what you have going on. You start maybe teaching a little bit. You're doing some work with students. It looks like potentially you start writing books at this time as well. I think is that am I following the timeline correctly?
Yeah, kind of. So the book is a little bit later.
Okay.
Well, a little bit of both. We can talk a little bit
Yeah,
about
we'll get to that.
that. I can tell the story, um, but at that time I started getting approached about from similar to Paul Breslin, right? He got very engaged with here Georgia State University as a professor, and then I always been very open to podcasts and making contributions. One thing that I learned early on in my career, for anyone that's upcoming or is considering our industry or any industry, I'm a big believer, like, give as much as you can, right? And open, share whatever you can, embrace people, help people, because it always comes back anyway, right?
Mhm.
And so at that time I started getting invited to be guest lecturer for University of South Carolina, some other places, doing panels. So it became much more engaged from that end, and I really enjoy, especially when you're around students.
Yep.
They're so young, so energetic. They have these big thoughts, so it helps me stay young too.
Yeah. They haven't been crushed by the standards and HR department. And I'm just joking, everyone. I'm
Exactly.
just joking.
Yeah, yeah,
It's true.
uh,
You get a lot of energy from them out there. So
yeah.
you
It's
enjoyed it, and you're
awesome.
good
Yeah.
at it. It
Oh,
seems like
I
you love.
love it. I love it. Who knows? Once I get older and kind of retire, you can do that a little bit
Yeah.
part time, so you stay sharp and get some energy. But yeah, so I've always done volunteering of this type of work whenever possible. Sometimes in person, sometimes virtual. I also start getting, for a lot of like my personal journey too. I start becoming much more thoughtful on how I engage with community, how I can help make a difference. And Steve, because if we look at what we have, we're very fortunate, right? We have families, we have a great career, and we live very well in comparison to most people in the world.
Yes.
So we think we have a lot that we can be thankful for. So it's like, hey, how I can pay a little bit forward, either volunteering time, right, engage in a cause that's important to me, and then of course with IHG, for example, there's many causes that is also aligned with the company. So I really enjoyed that piece.
Yeah. So you're with hotel equities. You join someone that you know, which is always important, especially as you
Yeah,
grow in your career. I know for
yeah.
me, I don't want to work with people I don't know, and if I don't know them, I have to be vouched by somebody.
Smart
Right
man.
as you get older now, you realize that. Not when you're younger, you don't have the connections yet. You got to put in the time, but as you get older, you kind of pick and choose. So you pick and choose, and maybe it wasn't the right fit. and you end up going back. So this is your second time doing this in your
Yeah.
career. You go back to a place where you were working. So you go back to
Yeah.
IHG. How does that happen?
Yeah. So that one was also interesting timing. So the previous SVP here called me and said, "Hey, Caesar, who used to be my boss, had left the company and would love to have you here in his role." And at the time wasn't possible just because Brad was getting first round of investment in the company, so he was going through a sales process. And I said, "Listen, I would love to, but right now I just can't. Right? I wouldn't be right for him." And I said, if it was a few months later, would be perhaps possible. And he said, "Okay, we'll wait." So I said, "All right." So wait waited until they secured the funds and the transition and everything was great. And then I made the move back to IHG, which was really enjoyable. A role that I really liked it because we're supporting the company managed hotels. So working with hotels was mostly Intercontinental brands, so across the US. So working with really great people, some people that already knew, great hotels, great markets. So that was something that I was really happy to be back. And also I saw IHG continue to evolve from a culture standpoint, becoming
Mhm.
much more inclusive, less silos, right? In a big company, I was going to have silos, but really making that effort to becoming more aligned, more fluid, and faster. So yeah, so end up working pretty good.
So you come back.
Yeah.
Had it changed in your mind when you came back? Because I remember there's like, all right, it was a little challenging at first. You were trying to, did you come back appreciating it more from
Yes.
when you left?
Yes. Yes. For a couple of reasons. Number one, I knew what to expect, right? I already kind of knew.
Hmm.
So I was okay. I know what I'm getting into. I'm ready for it.
Yep.
Number two, I already knew some of the team members from the hotels, the team players, and having the support from senior leadership coming in also gave me the peace of mind. It's like, hey, clearly they saw some sort of potential in you, and you left a good impression. So just go there and knock it out of the park, right? Do the best you can, and things will work out.
So you come back, you're doing a good job, you're joining different boards that are helping Intercontinental grow,
Yeah,
but now you're in your role, vice president of
yeah,
commercial for premium brands. So,
yeah,
there's unique titles. And so everyone knows, all right, the director of food and beverage does this, rooms director does this, general manager is this. What
yeah.
is your position for
Yeah.
IHG?
Yeah. So about a year and a half or so ago, we realigned on how we do business. So the group that I had was overseeing kind of got merged as we fully incorporated Kimpton into our day-to-day operations.
Hmm.
So then there was a luxury and lifestyle created, which mostly the Kimpton team is leading that. And then there is the premium brands. That's where I am now. So supporting Crown Plaza, Hotel Indigo, even and Voco. So
Hmm.
supporting four brands in the US. And then you have essentials and suites. So there is four groups that what is pretty cool about it, Steve, is that now we have full alignment between operations, commercial and revenue management. So we have like one team supporting one ownership group through all their assets, and then the group they work hand in hand. So it's one person from commercial, one person from ops. So it's really a great synergy, much faster. I think we're delivering some very positive results since incorporated. So it was a new way of doing business for us, and that's when kind of this role evolved from company managed hotels into the premium segment of the business.
I like it. So I know you can't give me all insider secrets and all the stuff you got going on, but you have multiple brands you're working with. How are
Mhm.
you driving business to these now, right? Because you're in charge of the commercial business, right? You're
Mhm.
putting the heads in the beds, you're making money in the outlets, you're helping
Mhm.
drive that. How do you help these hotels do that, right? Because I've never sat at your level. I've always been property
Yeah.
level. How would you help them achieve the goals?
Well, you'll be surprised. It's not very different from the property level, right? Just a little bit more on the volume side. But it's interesting. I was talking to someone over the weekend, and it's really interesting how the fundamentals are so important, because it doesn't matter, how much you grow, or the size of the business you're dealing with, or
Mhm.
the complexity. There's always these things that, to your point, you still do on property, which is making sure that you have the right segmentation, you look at the right data points, you have the right people doing the right things. So really, that's kind of the same approach. And for us here, one thing that is really good is that we have hotels assigned again for these pods, right? One person and from
Mhm.
operations, and then how we look at it is really how can we optimize each pod, because everyone has different strengths, and of course the operations people, they're of course pros at operations, but also there are some that may have come from revenue, may have come from commercial, and same thing from the commercial side. Sometimes we have a previous GM that moved into that role. So it's like, how can we divide and conquer and really complement each other's skill level and knowledge, so we can optimize performance? So let's say if I'm going to go visit a hotel that has some level of operational opportunity that I know how to help that hotel, it could be
Mhm.
as simple as some resources or whatever the case may be, then great. Then let that commercial person go there and help with that aspect, the same way that a operational person can help with a segmentation piece or whatever the case may be. So I think it's just kind of learning that side of things. But again, one thing that never goes out of style is looking at, hey, how we're performing, what's the opportunity in the market, and then what's our plan to go there and just close that gap or grow our outperformance. So it's simple, not always easy, but
I like that. Simple, not always easy. You mentioned there's some opportunities to look at. The world of hospitality is evolving a lot lately. There's a lot of different pressure on
Mhm.
hotel companies and hospitality companies.
Yeah.
What are you seeing out there? Because you get to see a big picture of a lot of different things. How are you seeing the industry right now?
Yeah. So a couple of things. So thankfully, our industry is very resilient and very solid, right? As we were talking earlier, the fundamentals of the industry, it's very, very good. So there's going to be fluctuations, caused by markets, politics, you name it. But doesn't matter how you slice and dice information and how you look into future years, it's very, very promising. Um, you know, uh, Different regions of the world are becoming, the middle class segment is growing a lot, like in India, for example. So the projections of travelers is just like continue to grow exponentially. The right now, the challenge that we see, and probably you see a lot through your work too, is just the pressure on the bottom line, because occupancy is there for the most part, rates are growing less, have stabilized to some degree, but certainly the costs and inflation really put some pressure on the
Yeah.
operations. So that's one area that we are constantly looking in two ways. Like, number one, how we can continue to drive more performance on the top line. Of course, revenue
Yep.
causes, cures a lot of
Problems,
issues.
yes.
Yeah. But then also how we can help owners, especially as a company, how we can become more efficient, provide better tools, better resources, better systems to really ensure that we can help them in the middle of the P&L, so they can make a good NOI at the end of the day.
Yeah, it's getting hard out there. Like just before this, I was interviewing Vittorio Asap. He's the founder of Serafina Restaurant Group. So they have
Yeah.
Serafina restaurants, and he's saying in New York, it's like, Steve, I don't know how. Like, they just raised the price of filet mignon 40%. My labor
Wow.
cost is up. Yeah, he said, my olive oil, there's a shortage of olive oil, and now
Wow.
we are getting the cost is raising in olive oil. He said, I have 1,000 employees, and now the minimum wage for everyone is going up, and I can't raise the price of a pizza anymore, or a pasta, or a filet, or shit. So
Mhm.
there's like this point, and so it's
Yeah.
interesting time that we're in. And for listeners, I don't like dating stuff because there's a lot of evergreen, but we're recording in August of 2024, and it's an interesting time, right? We were just
Yeah.
talking offline. I've been venting about this, right? I want to go on a cruise, but I can't get there because the flight is $5,000.
Yeah.
It's more than the cruise. So it's interesting time for hotels. And so I understand for the owners, right?
Yeah.
They're probably calling and saying, hey, how are we going to get through this?
Yeah. Yeah. And it's yeah, and especially also from a development perspective, right? I think that's why you're seeing so many companies, including ours, really focusing on the conversion brands more
Hmm.
so now because interest rates is still high, costs to build are very high. So for new development is becoming much more challenging to make it work, right? Based on however the deals were signed years ago and the assumptions. So yeah, it's something that it's challenging, but the good thing is that it always, whenever we have challenges as people or as industry, it forces innovation, it forces improvement in process, and I think we're gonna figure out a lot. I think as a
I agree
industry.
with you. I agree with you. And you
Mhm.
mentioned challenges and getting through things. You're the author of a book titled The Power of Addiction,
Mhm.
which is, you know, I have to buy the book. I have not read it yet, listeners, but I'm buying it today on
Don't buy,
Amazon.
I'll send you.
We're going to support because you'll buy mine when it comes out. I'll support you. So tell me about how this happens because it is not easy to sit down and write
Mhm.
something. And once you start writing it, I don't know about you, but for me, I'm like, who am I to write this book? Like, what am I doing to share this? Some of that imposter syndrome. What was it like it for you writing this, putting it out, and now it out in the world?
It was a journey. Um, so I first started writing when I was 6 to 9 months sober. And I started writing as if it was a book, but deep down, to your point, I was like, don't think I'll ever publish anything, right? I was always never been a good writer anyway. It's
Mhm.
like, but it was very therapeutic. It really helped me process because when you're overcoming an addiction, you have to look at many things. You have to look at, hey, right, really increase your level of self-awareness, self-honesty, so you can say, hey, really, I really gotta address this, and then you gotta relearn everything because in my experience, my in my journey, Steve, I was drinking like all day, every day, for years. And I would wake up thinking, okay, how I'm gonna plan my day so I know exactly when I get right my next drink. And so everything that I did was around drinking. And so now here you are, you're kind of just now I can't drink. So how, right? You got to
Mhm.
relearn everything. You got to relearn how to deal with emotions, how to tackle your day, how to talk with people, how to process emotion. And it was a journey to get there. I was always a big drinker. I was always a partier, and but then you kind of quietly escalate, and then it got to the point where I was like, "Wow, this is really way out of control." And um, um, a couple of two awakenings for me was there's several little. Um, Signs that start happening. One's like you get away from this, you get lucky with that, and you start having physical feelings, and so you start compounding. But then really the what got me was our daughter. She was like 2.5 or so, and my dad is an alcoholic, and I remember growing up with that, all that pain and anger. And then thankfully I had a little bit of clarity, and I said, man, you can't do that. It's like you're doing the same, if not more, than what you resent your dad for, and you can't do that to her. And then open the door. But really, to answer your question, so I wrote half of the book years ago. And then around COVID, I reconnected with a friend of mine here that he wrote a couple books, and he had stopped drinking too. And then I said, hey, I wrote this stuff years ago, haven't visited for a while. Take a look, see what you think. And then he read and he called me and said, man, you got to do it. Go and finish this book. So it was the nudge that I needed. And I finished right after COVID. And then I self-published, and um, the interesting piece is that I was like, for the first 6 years of my recovery, I was kind of I was in the closet,
Yeah, quiet about it. Hmm.
yeah, because like I was so much, I was ashamed, I had guilt, didn't know what people would think. But then as I start opening up a little bit with people, one-on-one conversations, you start realizing, wow, how many people it impacts, either directly, indirectly, and even people that don't have anything to do or exposure to addiction, they still relate in some shape or form. Because to our point earlier, we always have something going on in our lives, and we always have a challenge. And I think there's always some sort of correlation on how you can deal with tough times in your life. So then we kind of start growing. And then when I was 8 years sober, I went all in, and I said, you know what? It's like, if I want to be able to help take down the bias, the shame that is around addiction, I said, if I don't do it as someone that's went through it, like, then how can I expect that to ever change? So then I think my sense of purpose became bigger than my fear of what would happen.
Love that line. I appreciate you sharing that, because not a lot of people open up and share those things. And for listeners, just rewind that last 2 minutes, because in hospitality, you're exposed to a lot of things, and you being in sales, hosting dinners,
Mhm.
hosting lunches, all these different things can lead to opportunities where you're always around alcohol, and it can slip quickly for a lot of people. And I've seen it with bartenders and
Yeah.
servers and different people around things. And so I think, just if you're having that and you're listening to this, I'm sure Caesar wouldn't mind you reaching out or just buying the book or whatever. I'm sure he'd be happy to chat with any of you listening out there, because you can't feel alone, right? I've seen it happen to a couple of people, and it's just like, oh man, it gets a little scary.
Yeah.
But I appreciate you sharing that. But you're starting to see it more and more. Like the younger generations, they're not
Yeah.
about drinking and all that thing. Like I still have a glass of wine with dinner, and I'm like, am I
Yeah.
drinking too much because I'm having a glass of wine with dinner? During pandemic, I was like, all right, let's.
Yeah.
It's a party time, but then it started to extend because we all thought we were going back to work after 2 weeks. Um, but I think there's a lot of people out there, right? Like you, it's amazing to see. We talk about this. Like I did it for 3 months of no drinking at all this
Yeah.
year, and my heartburn went away. I slept way better. Like
Wow.
everything changes in
Yeah.
your body. It's amazing to see. Just but part of the culture you grew up with, right? Like American
Yeah.
culture. Went to
Yeah.
college. You're partying. It continues on. You have
Yeah.
after-hour work events. You have all these things, and it just kind of starts going, right?
Yeah.
So
You're
I
spot
appreciate
on.
you sharing your story, because I'm sure it helps a lot of people out there for sure. And to have to be brave enough, because I'm sure people were like, "Hey, who's this guy Caesar? He's got a book out here."
Yeah.
Right? Were you worried about that when you did
Yeah.
that?
Yeah. Yeah. There was, he came, that's like, hey, but I think that, generally speaking, I think whenever, listen, I'm a big believer that people are good, right? I think
Hmm.
there's very, very few people that are not naturally good. And my thought is like, hey, if I hear someone opening up and, right, sharing something that they're not proud of, but they're sharing this to help educate someone, or help to a greater good, I think people are forgiven, or they understand. And I think thankfully nowadays, to your point, it's becoming a little bit more normalized that, hey, listen, we're all humans. We all have something going on. Doesn't matter if you're CEO of a major company, you still have problems. I mean, it
Yeah.
may not be financial, right? You may be
Yeah.
set for generations, but man, your health may not be good. Your home life may be a wreck. You may have, friends that are in a dark place, whatever the case may be. And I think that um, that has been the surprising part of this. I haven't, of course, there may be people that they read that and say, "Oh my God, this guy's crazy and really messed up." And but I haven't heard that feedback. Right, the feedback that I received has been very positive. That people say, "Hey, you helped me understand this. This is better. You helped me talk to my son about it, whatever the
Mhm.
case may be." And that's exactly why I wrote. It's like, hey, if I can help a little bit there, um, that was worth it.
And
Even if there's something that comes later as a consequence, I'm ready for it.
oh man, and I'm proud of you, Sharon. Like we're just meeting now, but it takes guts to do it. And I say, look, I've told a lot of people this. Like we all have challenging times, and so It's
Mhm.
not a commercial. I wish they were paying us, but BetterHelp is a tool that
Yeah,
I used. I
it's
love
amazing.
BetterHelp, and it helped me through a lot of challenging things and helped me clear my mind on a lot of things. And I recommend it to a lot of people, and they use it. So don't feel like there's this stigma because I talked to some
Yeah,
older people and they're like, "Oh, you shouldn't talk about that. You shouldn't mention these things. People think you're crazy." I said, "No, we're all a little crazy. We all need a little laugh.
yeah, we are.
We all need people to vent to." And so,
We are. We
I
are.
think it's
And
helpful.
that's one quick plug to your point. One big awakening for me is like when I first start working for recovery, I went to AA meetings, and then I went there, and then you see all these people, right? In the beginning, I had a lot of like judgment and bias, but as you hang around and that those barriers and walls start to fall, you realize, Steve, how thin the line is, right, between someone like myself that really my rock bottom was very low, very high in comparison to others that really lost everything multiple times, went to jail multiple times, and became homeless because a lot of times, even as I was going through it, is like the hardest word that I could say is like, man, I'm an alcoholic because I always assume that with, you gotta be under the bridge, right? Or you don't equate that to someone living a normal life.
Right?
And I think that's why I wanted to showcase that, is because especially with addiction, you become so good at hiding it that someone that's completely normal and you look up to that person and they're a mess, right? Their life is crumbling, and so to your point, always be open to figuring out what works for you. Better help, talk to someone, because I never met like an addict, or never met anyone that's depressed, or never met anyone that's in a dark place that wants to be in that place, right? No one wants to wake up and say, man, today I'm going to be really depressed,
No.
you know? But we get there. And so I
Mhm.
think, to your point, find whatever resources there are. If you have friends you feel safe talking to, better help, anything that can be of benefit and help you, find what works.
Yeah, I love this. And I hope this helps somebody out there listening. If you're in the car, we're talking some real life things here, not just hospitality. And I appreciate you sharing those things, Caesar, because I think we'll definitely help somebody listening today that just might need to hear it at the right time,
Yeah,
you know? But let's get back to this and what we're doing here. I appreciate you sharing all this. And,
sure.
you know, I want to ask two more questions because it's amazing. Time is flying by here already with us chatting. But you get to see so many things in the world of hotels,
Hmm.
and you can talk about your hotel or something else, but what are you excited about in hospitality right now? What are you seeing that's like, wow, that's really cool. I like seeing this.
Yeah. Well, a couple of things. I think I love seeing the new generation when I interact. I know that as an industry, we still have to do better. We still have to do better. And thanks for doing this podcast and for all you do for the industry, because I don't know if the new generation get the exposure that you and I got growing up, where there was that, that excitement about travel, about the whatever, the airline industry, about hotel. I think everything a little bit became more transactional
Mhm.
over time. That I don't know if the glamour or the excitement, but I think it's important that we expose to people that, listen, uh, I started as a room service assistant guy, wasn't great at school. Many people started kind of from any hourly employee. So I think there is a lot of wonderful things that our industry present opportunity. Gee, hold
It's
on,
okay.
man.
It's all right.
This is it. That is the last one.
We got the lights going out. But I'm going to say this. We're going to keep this in. Yeah,
Cool.
it makes me laugh, guys. We cut this part out, but Caesar's in a room and it shows you how green and efficient IHG is. The lights have gone out twice during the podcast.
Exactly. You're gonna move a little more. the and So I think it's great. I think we got to start showing how exciting and how much potential there is for the younger generation. That there's many options, and so we do. For example, we partner here with HBCUs in Atlanta, which is great. Like many hotel companies, summer internship. So I think we're doing some good things as an industry, but we got to do better to share the excitement, provide what's like to be in a hotel or work in partnership with the industry. So that's one thing that really excites me about our industry, the younger generation, and seeing how smart and how aware they are. I
Mhm.
think this new generation is much more thoughtful and much more emotionally intelligent. I think because they have more access to a lot, more things that we had coming up. And then I think also is really one thing that really amazed me is like how resilient we are as as people, as an industry, because through COVID, I mean, that really brought our industry to the knees for a good amount of time. That
Mhm.
you had very intelligent and people like Bill Gates saying, forget business travel, right? Is never going to come up, or whatever, it was at 50%. And you can see that, yes, it's taking some time, but it rebounds. And I think that's the beauty of our industry, that while you and I are having a great chat via computer, would be much better in person.
I agree.
And that will never change, or I don't know, definitely not in my lifetime. I think no matter how technology evolves, I think feeling that energy in person, that ability to touch someone, that's something that is here for us. And I think we facilitate that as an industry, and people like to build memories, at work, with your family. I can guarantee, if anyone think about memory in their families, it's probably some sort of like, besides something exciting in their home, or there's probably some travel in there,
Hmm.
right? Something that is like, wow, that place allowed for an opportunity that it would never have. So I think these are the two things that really give me hope and keeps me excited.
I love that. And I think you're right. You mentioned it. Like I now spend, well, cut on something. Again, this is a real life situation. I'm like,
Ah,
I don't need a new car. I could get a new car, but I'd rather use that money and go travel with my family and have that memory and do that. Like this is a real conversation we had over the weekend. Like, no, let's go on a better trip. And I drive 4 miles
exactly.
a day. That's I don't need a new car for that. But anyhow, I agree with you. So look, you shared a lot with us here today. But one last question. If you could whisper in the ear of young Caesar sitting at the Renaissance Hotel overnight,
Mm.
just starting out, what advice are you giving to him?
Whoa. That is a oof, that is a loaded question. Man, I would say, be you. Um, be you. And for a couple of reasons. Number one, I think a lot of the challenges that I've had, including to my addiction, um, things at work that I could have done better, that I think didn't help me to be at my best, is because I was trying to fit in, right? I was trying to project something into, hey, I met Steve. Steve is my boss. Oh, he wants me to see this that way. And then you start morphing, and usually you see that that's not the case. You are in a position, you are, people bring you in their lives because of who you are. And I think that, not saying don't learn, don't evolve, don't take feedback, and that's not what I'm saying, but it's like, be you. It's okay to be yourself, be true to yourself, because I think makes things a little bit easier, right? That way you're able to focus all your energy into what you're trying to do versus trying to, well, am I doing this right? What they're thinking of me? Do they think I suck? Or it's like, you can't control all that. So just be you, do your best. And afterwards, like, the rest, it is what it is.
I think that's great advice. You got my goosebumps here, right? It's true. It's to keep it simple, believe in yourself, and be yourself. I love that advice.
No,
And so,
no.
for anyone that's listening right now, if they wanted to get in contact with you, what is the best way for them to connect with you?
Oh, LinkedIn. Feel free to reach out. I think I'm the only Caesar Wurm out there, so you'll find me pretty easy. Also being a little bit more active on other socials, so feel free to find me on Facebook, Instagram. But to your point, Steve, I'm always happy to engage with anyone. So if you shoot me a note, I'll definitely get back to you.
Yeah, that's how we met, right on LinkedIn. It's
Yeah.
power LinkedIn, guys. So get on there, find Caesar. You can connect with me too if you haven't yet.
Yeah.
And if you found this of value, this podcast or this episode, make sure to share it with somebody because we did share a lot of different things. And so if you found some value in it, make sure to share, subscribe, and like it. And Caesar, very grateful you spent some time with us here today. Very appreciative.
Likewise, my friend. Thank you.